If you are interested in starting your own podcast, we use Buzzsprout because it is simple and easy to use. Buzzsprout can get your show listed on every major platform while giving you the resources for a great podcast website, audio players that can drop into other websites, detailed analytics to see how people are listening to your podcast, and tools to promote your episodes. Podcasting isn't hard when you have the right partners, and that is why over 100,000 podcasters are already subscribed to Buzzsprout to get their message out to the world. Following the link in our episode descriptions lets Buzzsprout know that we sent you. So in return, you will receive a $20 Amazon gift card from Buzzsprout while signing up for a paid plan. Most importantly, every subscription through our link is always appreciated and helps support our show so we can continue delivering the quality content that you guys listen to. That being said, back to the show.
Hello and welcome to Comic Book Junkies. I'm Andrew.
This is Joe.
And this week we have a recap and review of Blackest Night, written by Geoff Johns and drawn by Ivan Reis. This ran from June 2009 through May 2010. I believe it's an 8-issue series. I'm sure there was a whole bunch of tie-ins, but the digital reader we had just had the 8 issues and a prologue. So yeah, there's a little prologue at the beginning, and we see the Black Hand, who, you know, is kind of like a low-level Silver Age villain, and there's kind of like a foreshadowing of the Black Lanterns coming to mess people up. We also do get kind of like a background on the 7 tribes of lanterns, which I'm not going to go into deep detail right now, but there's the Green Lantern, the Sinestro Corps, which is yellow, the Red Lanterns with Rage, there's Larfleeze, who's his own Orange Lantern Corps, he's just one dude, the Blue Lanterns, the Star Sapphires, and the mysterious Indigo Tribe. And we see that basically the origination of the color spectrum and all of these corps all come from the Big Bang, basically. So, you know, when the universe was created, so were these colors and the emotional spectrum, and then the powers that be ultimately, you know, grew into what they are today, with there being basically space cops based on light and colors. But other than that, it kind of gives us a little bit of background story that, you know, Batman's currently dead from the events of Final Crisis?
Yeah, that takes place right after Final Crisis, and I think at the same time as Flash Rebirth. I think Flash Rebirth might have started first, but the stories kind of overlap each other, which I thought was pretty cool. But it starts with an unnamed tombstone next to Martha and Thomas Wayne's tombstone. We see flashes of Sue Dibney tombstone, which you can learn about by listening to our Identity Crisis episode, but also Ronnie Raymond's, who is one of 2 people that make up Firestorm, for those that don't know. Barry's talking to Hal Jordan and tells him since Batman died, Gotham's crime has shot up because low-level thugs are getting around, which I thought was interesting, seeing we had a topic episode about if superheroes unintentionally create more crime. But at this point in the timeline of things, Bruce Wayne has not been announced dead yet because they don't want it to coincide with the disappearance of Batman. Hal tells Barry that Tim is the new Robin and is convinced that the Omega Beams did not actually kill Batman, even though we saw his body immediately get skeletonized. But he also mentions that the world has become a more dangerous place since then, and it's rumored that both Aquaman and Martian Manhunter have died since Batman, so Hal kind of reflects on his relationship with Batman, and although they never really got along too well, it was kind of like their passing of their parents, that they did care about each other that way. And as they leave the graveyard, Bruce Wayne's skeleton gets pulled right up out the ground by Black Hand, and he's holding Bruce's skull right in his hand at the end of this prologue here.
Yeah, and that was a really cool end of the prologue. But before, you know, we move on to the first issue, I did like how this whole a lot of this event in general is kind of contextualizing and modernizing death in comics. Kind of gives it a more recent explanation, which we'll get into a little bit more later. And, you know, I mean, if you're with the program, you know that there's spoilers, but also, you know, just remembered, if you're new here, we are going to be spoiling the book, even though it is old. But this is your little heads up. But Hal and Barry talk about when Hal died, and, you know, also when Barry disappeared and was dead. Hal tells Barry that he's like, you know, everybody came out, you know, people from other dimensions, other times, they came to eulogize you. You were, you know, a hero. You were a saint. And he's like, but when I died a sinner. So they have differing perspectives on the topic of death.
That's
pretty good transition into the part 1 of the series, where Black Hand kind of talks about how death is inevitable and the only thing you can count on, and starts licking Bruce's skull.
Kinky dude, he's weird.
Yeah, weird. Anyway.
He didn't even wipe it off, dude. He's just licking it. Maybe if he did that to chicks, he wouldn't be so angry.
The story flashes over to Hal Jordan flying with his boys, and he's reflecting on how Jon Stewart and even Katma had a stronger connection than him and Carol ever had, and unfortunately Katma died by one of the Star Sapphires, but he also mentions that Kyle Rayner had a loved one that was murdered as well and found in a refrigerator just to love again, Alan Scott's daughter, only to pass away, saving the lives of others. And so when he's reflecting, Guy's the only one that found a significant other with a happy ending. So Hal just kind of understands that this job, it comes with that kind of territory. And after he's done reflecting, he realized that Coast City is actually finally rebuilt, and it's thanks to him and his Lantern homeboys. After that, Professor Stein, who's the other half of Firestorm, is visiting the grave of Ronnie Raymond, and even though there's rain, it appears that the surrounding plants are dying. Garth aka Aqualad, tells Mara he believes Aquaman should have been buried in Atlantis and not on land and in dirt, even though Mara says that's exactly what he wanted, so he could be next to his dad.
Because Aquaman don't like fish dicks like the rest of these people, so he says I'll peace out with the normies.
Can't you take a hint?
Yeah, they don't get it, dude. Fish brain.
Plug. It's too funny. But
Big Alf is visiting the cemetery at that point, and he's going to visit Bruce's tombstone, and he's just kind of checking things out when he realizes that someone dug up his boy, and he's like, oh shit, knew I shouldn't have buried him here. But he did it anyways. And moving on, it's kind of Hal and Barry are at the headquarters 3 stories below the meeting room, because apparently they have a morgue down there, which everybody, like, all the heroes get to be buried in their own cemetery or with their family, their friends. They get visited. And I know that there's body snatching and stuff like that in the DC universe, but you're telling me they couldn't return any of the villains to their family? I mean, I get if it's like a space alien who ain't from here. The Rogues had their own graveyard, but like, what about a Batman villain? I don't see too many Batman villains getting their bodies snatched. You're telling me if let's just say like Scarecrow dies for some reason, like they're just gonna snatch his body and like none of the Crane family's gonna get to see him? That's kind of fucked up. It's like, this is property of the Justice League now. We just repossessed his body.
Yeah, so think about that if you want to be a villain.
Apparently it's like, what, do they also like take his will too? It's like, sorry Crane family, we're taking everything that your father had. It's been owned by the Justice League now. They just put it in the Hall of Justice and they just look at it and probably ignore it. Apparently people didn't even know they had that down there, so it's like, who does know about it? Just Batman?
Basically. But Hal takes Barry down there to brief him on everybody who has died since Barry's been gone. And after Hal fills him in on everybody that's passed since his disappearance, recapping the whole identity crisis story with Sue and Ralph, all of a sudden they get paged by Alfred, and he lets them know immediately that he buried Bruce right next to his parents out of respect, but like you were saying, clearly one big mistake because Bruce's skull is missing.
Yeah, and I like also too that while they're kind of discussing like the morgue, this is when Barry gets filled in that, ever since he died, the Justice League's no longer untouchable, and that everybody and their brother fucking dies around here. Whether it's a villain, it's a hero, and Hal kind of lets them know that, everyone's kind of died and come back at some point while he's been gone, or they're just straight up dead now. And Barry's just kind of like, what? Because I mean, prior to the original Crisis, death wasn't a common thing in the DC universe. It really hit its stride, with the death of Superman, which was while Barry was gone. But since then, time and time again, even into today, people are dying left and right just to come back for whatever reason, and very few stay dead at this point. But, at this point in time, it's still kind of like a fresh thing, and Barry's just kind of like, what the hell? He's like, this isn't how things used to be.
Mm-hmm. And to lead into that, too, at the end of the issue, Hawk Girl's
telling Hawkman that she doesn't believe that they should be together because of their curse. Hawkman tells her that she shouldn't feel forced to love him, but she says she can't help but to love him anyway, even if she ends up dying every time she lets destiny take control over their fate. And as she tells him that, she gets stabbed right through the back, only for Hawkman to get murdered next. And before he dies, he sees Black Hand, and he tells Black Hand that he's going to kill him, even though that's impossible. But the issue concludes with Hawkman and Hawkgirl passing without the chance to reincarnate for the first time, which is scary. And then right before we get into part 2, there's also a part where the Guardians start trying to brainstorm like what to do, and even the Black Lanterns have gotten to them too, because one of the Guardians turns into a vampire and starts just ripping the heart out of the other one and biting his neck.
Yeah, dude, the vampire Smurf starts sucking, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Nibbling on that ear. He's gonna get them all, dude.
Yeah, we see the black rings disperse, and they're flying around looking for dead bodies, so that kind of sets up the overarching problem.
And, you know, on the Hawkgirl Hawkman thing, you know, she's Kendra Saunders at this point. She's not Shiera, you know, so she doesn't have the context of their whole history as where Hawkman does. And so she doesn't feel obligated to love him like Shiera always did. But, you know, she's kind of got that thing in her. Like, you know, maybe he was just slanging, dude. You know what I'm saying? Like, so maybe across universe and time, like, she just remembers he can fucking sling. And maybe they should be calling him Hogman, dude, instead of Hawkman.
No way.
Because he's slinging hog across time and space, and she keeps coming back for it, bro. So, you know, maybe that's unrequited love. But that point aside, we're into part 2 now, and you know who's not slinging hog anymore is Ray, the Atom, because his woman's a psycho, and I think she's technically dead, and she had killed Sue Dibney, for those who don't know, and you can hear more about that in our Identity Crisis recap. Plug. But he's calling Hawkman to cry over the phone like a teenage girl in the 80s, and Hawkman ain't there to listen to it. He's just trying to drink his coffee and take his shit. And but Hawkman picks up the phone because he is one of the bros, and he tells him, you know, come through, but don't talk about her no more. And you know, things start to get real dicey from then on out, because that's taken over Hawkman, and Ray don't know that. We also jump over to Barbara Gordon talking with Pops because things are getting dark and he's scared to turn off the bat signal. And she's trying to fill him with optimism, and all of a sudden, you know, superheroes come crashing through the sky and smack right into the equipment that lights up the sky. And so you know that no matter what kind of optimism you have, if a Green Lantern just crashes next to you, you know, Commissioner Gordon ain't gonna be too pumped. He's like, oh shit, my anxiety is real. And just standing on the rooftop. But
that's all part of like a plan that Flash has. So him and the Flash are working together, but at the same time, Mara finally agrees to Aqualad that she'll turn over the body. But when they go to visit the casket, it's completely gone, and they look right on over, and it doesn't take long for Aquaman to be fully resurrected, and it's just destroying Aqualad and Mara.
I'm gonna put this fish dick in your mouth. It's the first thing he says, because
Quote.
We'll get into it more after too, but the Black Lanterns, they turn everybody a little zesty. They get them like a little mean, dude. So everyone is always like distraught that they're fighting one of their loved ones who's just apparently reanimated, but they're always like a giant dickhead to him. So, you know, he is being a literal fish dick to them, and I find that that's kind of cool. But yeah, things are kind of getting dicey there, obviously, because now we're starting to see more of our heroes being reanimated and controlled by black power rings. And yeah, obviously he starts beating the hell out of both of them because neither of them can stand a chance against Aquaman when he's like actually pissed. And he had a really cool there's a really cool panel in there where the Atlantean guards are trying to subdue Aquaman because obviously they're getting tossed up, and he just summons like some vicious sharks to come and just mangle these dudes, and I just thought that was cool. Like, that's the kind of Aquaman that I like. He needs to be clean cut and dorky looking, but he needs to be badass when it comes down to it. I don't like this tribal tattoo, long-haired Aquaman bullshit. You can keep it. This Aquaman was cooler and scarier than any other Aquaman. Granted, he's evil, but like, you can do that when he's alive. So I thought that that was really cool. And then the Dead Man, we jump over to the Dead Man. And he's having a rough time of it because all these dead people are getting reanimated, and you know, he's dead, and he's the Dead Man, so he's been dead for for a while and he's not supposed to come back to life. But with these rings flying around, I mean, obviously that's a danger that he has to deal with because he can be split from his spirit at that point, even from his dead body.
And then to conclude this issue, the Spectre, Zatanna, and a lot of the other magic beings start doing some investigating, and Black Hand shows up to just ruin all of that. He goes on a spiel about how some live beyond death, like Hawkman and Spectre, and how moving them out of the way will allow for him to just completely take over the universe and make it dark. But Spectre gets taken over and wants Hal Jordan, who also was the host of Spectre at one point in time in comics. But Hal and the Flash are still busy fighting dead Martian Manhunter, while Mera and Aqualad are getting their ass kicked by Aquaman, and Mera's able to escape. Aqualad isn't, but Flash and Green Lantern make one hell of a duo because they throw Gordon's cop car right on Martian Manhunter and then light him on fire, which is his weakness for those that don't know. So that keeps him occupied for a while. Not long enough, though, because he finds him shortly after and brings dead Hawkman, dead Hawk Girl, Sue, Elongated Man, and Firestorm with him, which leads us into part 3.
Yeah, so obviously Hal and Flash have to fight these guys, but they're having a hard time trying to figure out how to beat them because obviously it's just the two of them and they're fighting like a whole gang of like Justice Leaguers that now are powered by powerful black rings. But luckily Ray was hanging out on Hawkman's ring, so he didn't fall for the phone call, and he got a chance to examine it, and he said it doesn't operate the same way as your ring, Hal. So this is a completely different thing, and that it kind of co-ops their system rather than it being powered by their will or any other type of human emotion or anything like that. But they also get some help from the Indigo Lanterns who come in clicking, and they're not saying anything that anyone can understand, but they're shooting and blasting everybody with their little purple beams, and then everyone's just like, well, who the hell are you? And then all of a sudden they're like, now that danger's out of the way, they're like, hi, I'm an Indigo Lantern. I don't have a name because we're a collective, just like a colony of ants.
College students.
We don't have identities here.
Right.
But they show up, and for some reason they've got some answers. And they're like, yeah, all these Black Lanterns are coming across the universe, and you know what we need to do? We need to power up all of our different rings, all the different colors on the spectrum to blast these bastards. And they're like, oh, well, that's easier said than done, because then they have to reunite all of the other color spectrums, which they have to go off-world to do, which kind of just leaves Earth as like a sitting duck while Hal and gang have to go gather everybody. But during that, they're at the Justice League headquarters. Mera is filling in the new Firestorm on everything that she knows, including the death of Aqualad, and the aliens are talking about the battle between light and dark, how light is made up of all the different colors. But basically to cap this issue, so the reanimated Firestorm, Ronnie Raymond, comes back to find the new Firestorm. I believe his name's Jason Rush, and he has obviously a two-part counterpart as well, but his is his girlfriend named Jen. I don't really know much about her, but he gets sneak dissed and called Urkel, and then chokes out his woman right in front of him because, he just got stuffed in Ronnie's body pretty much, and he just can only witness it as a floating head. And he's like, don't do it. And he's like, no, this is good for you. And Ronnie is crazy though, because he's got some good wisecracks while he's doing all this shit too. It kind of made me respect him a little bit more because he's just such a dickhead. But yeah, that's kind of how it caps off the issue with a really sad Jason, which honestly, he talked about not firestorming anymore with her anyways, because she wouldn't stop thinking about getting knocked up and married every time they'd go fight someone. He's like, I got a job to do. And she's like, oh, why won't you just put one in me? He's like, look, we gotta fight demons and, lizards and aliens.
It's like that meme where like you go to work for 10 hours and you come home and then your wife's like, would you still love me if I'm a sponge?
She's doing that the whole time they're fighting anything.
Right.
That pissed me off too.
Back to business. Part 4. The people from the Indigo tribe take off with Hal because together they can neutralize the darkness with all their different colored rings and having like a representative for each one. And meanwhile, Flash, Mera, and the Atom all basically have to fight every dead hero and villain you can think of. So the Atom's able to shrink him, Mera, and the Flash through a phone line, which gives them enough time to get safe and come up with a plan. But they think it's going to be hopeless without Superman or Wonder Woman, who've been just absent throughout this time. But Barry does a great job of convincing them that this is their moment to be Superman or to be Wonder Woman, considering that they know more about this situation than anybody right now. And so they're also able to find Alan Scott at the end of this issue, which helps a little bit because he's a Green Lantern. But the catch here is his ring is its own power source and doesn't draw from the same energy as Hal's and the other lanterns, so it's more of a deterrent. And at the end of the issue, Flash runs into Black Hand, but Black Hand is at full strength and is able to summon Necron, which is some type of Grim Reaper mega villain.
Well said. And then it starts to pick up the pace from here. So in part 5, Hal's now gathered a representative for every Lantern Corps, and they're ready to fight the darkness. And while that's getting ready to go down, Flash is going at it with Black Hand, and that's when Wally shows up to help, which I really like. Anytime, I mean, it's almost the same thing every time, but I love it because they just kind of give each other knuckles, and they're like, hey, you're the Flash, I'm the Flash. And they just, play slap ass and are like, yeah, we're good friends. And we're also like nephews. And he's like, we're family. But so, I mean, their dynamic just rules. And I mean, who can you count on in a dire multiversal phenomenon than the Flash is at this point? So I thought that was really cool, just seeing their dynamic again. And Barry's also pleased because Wally has brought reinforcements like Superman and Wonder Woman, and pretty much all the other non-dead heavy hitters that are still left, which there's quite a few of them. But the Flash and gang are fighting back as hard as they can, and Flash is about to get got by an evil Guardian, but lucky for him, Hal and the crew make it there just in time to combine their powers and settle it once and for all. So they find out that blasting with multiple rings at the same time can neutralize a Black Lantern, but at this point, everybody on the spectrum is shooting this giant
Black Lantern.
Yeah, giant Black Lantern, hoping to recreate the white light that is the antithesis to death that's currently powering it. And I mean, at one point, like, small note, like, Kyle Rayner becomes a White Guardian. I think that's like a New 52 thing. But point is, you combine all the colors on the spectrum and you can get white light. And the white light is obviously the answer to fighting the absolute darkness. But while they're doing that, it doesn't really work. In fact, it actually just made Necron stronger, so good job, guys. And then that also reanimates Bruce Wayne as Batman, which I believe creates like an emotional tie that allows like Necron to like really get in there for everybody who's remaining. And then, yeah, just dead Batman just kind of crumbles and dies right in front of Hal and Barry just to kind of piss them off.
The black rings are like tied to emotion, whether it's like good or negative, and basically Batman's resurrected right in front of his best friends just to get like dismantled right in front of him, and so that puts Barry as a target for one of the rings. But moving into part 6, the Batman stunt at the end triggered just enough emotion for the black rings to come after Hal too, but Barry's just fast enough to grab Hal and escape together. On the other side of things though, Mara and Adam were captured by Jean, his dead wife that he still loves, and Deadman's able to hop into her body to tell them that every Black Lantern in the universe is on his way right now and to run while they can, but Jean's too strong, so Deadman gets ejected and Mara and Adam are free at this point, but Mara knocks Jean's jaw right off her face, right in front of the Atom. So I thought that was pretty hard. But at the end of the issue, one of the Guardians starts to take place in the fight and becomes a Green Lantern himself. So he kind of deputizes himself.
About time.
He says that they all have the power to deputize one other person. And so all the different Lanterns get a buddy or a sidekick rather. So Lex gets summoned to be an Orange Lantern, Mara a Red Lantern, Barry is a Blue Lantern, Wonder Woman a purple, and Scarecrow a yellow.
Yeah, which I thought was like a sick team up because, I mean, it's, you know, a mix of villain and heroes, but everything was like right on the nose for who should be chosen. Kind of made a lot of sense. I mean, I guess I didn't know that Mara was that pissed off all the time, but, you know, I guess it makes sense.
She seems crabby.
She is pretty crabby, but it's a good one. Part 7. So the new Lanterns, I mean, they're pretty cool, especially Scarecrow. I mean, that one fits the most out of any of them, obviously, because he's all about fear. But yeah, he's like full blown, like ready to use that yellow ring, and he's ready to contribute. But of course, you can't trust Lex, especially because he's an Orange Lantern, so he's greedy as all hell. And he says, "Give me that," and he tries to snatch it off Scarecrow, which which works, which is hilarious. So you can't trust Lex no matter what. And on top of that, Black Hand and Necron are just kind of murdering the Guardians and rip out his intestines and use it to power more chaotic bullshit through the Black Lantern. And so nothing's really going well right now. But, you know, Guy and Kyle and the whole core of every colored lantern show up at this point, which helps. But there's just a shitload of Black Lanterns at this point, and it ain't really that good. We find out that the entity that created life is trapped, and Necron wants to destroy it. The Guardians have been hiding that. There's kind of this illusion that everything kind of started on Oa with these blue-headed dorkwads, and it turns out they've been hiding that fact that, you know, life originated on Earth, and that, you know, everything good that can save us is actually here. So they've been hiding the fact so that Necron or Black Hand or whoever couldn't come here and destroy the source of everything, pretty much. But with that,
Sinestro's pissed.
Sinestro wants to get his hands on that entity because somebody has to take charge of it and kind of intertwine with it. And Hal's like, well, obviously, he seems like a good candidate. But Sinestro's like, no, dude, Mom says it's my turn to play Xbox. And he's like, you got to be Parallax. I want to be this. And so he charges in and he takes control of it for a short amount of time to become the most powerful lantern at that point.
Yeah. Part 8, Sinestro's big tough, and he's coming after Necron. Even with all that power, though, it's too much for Sinestro's ego, and he gets his ass ejected, too. So, Deadman takes over Guy and tells Hal that in order to get Necron to leave, they need to go right to the source of things that's keeping him here, which is Black Hand. If they can get his heart to beat again, that would defeat Necron and all the Black Lanterns. So, the Flash has a pretty cool quote here. He says, "Life doesn't give us purpose, we give life purpose." And once Hal realizes that everybody here that has died basically chose life over staying dead, and uses that to build like a stronger connection with everybody fighting. And so this time he tries his stab at getting the power of the entity, but instead of doing it by himself, he does it with his fellow Justice League members and other Lanterns. And so they share the power of the life entity, which finally causes Necron enough pain to lose. And Black Hand's heart starts beating. The anti-monitor breaks out. He was only a part of this story for like 2 minutes.
Where the hell was he, dude?
I know.
Why is he always involved?
I don't know. Tug at my heartstrings, and he and Necron disappear for good. But what's interesting that everyone is now alive, even the people that aren't supposed to be, like Aquaman, Martian Manhunter, even Deadman. But on the other side of things, some people stay dead. Ralph and Sue are still missing, and Black Hand and the reps from the Indigo tribe are missing too. But I guess without anybody noticing, it looks like the people from the Indigo tribe are back on their planet, and they brought Black Hand with them to imprison him. But the story concludes with Hal and Barry. Hal's talking to Barry and tells him that they need to break away from the past and the Blackest Night and head into tomorrow.
Bravo.
That being said, any final thoughts, Berger?
No, dog. I say let's just get into these ratings, or I'll just kind of recap my thoughts.
Alrighty. Well, I'll give it anywhere between an 8.5 to a 9 out of 10. Geoff Johns does a great job of telling stories that tie into each other. Even though Identity Crisis wasn't his story, he made it feel like it was. He has a very high DC IQ, or like just good with events in general, because I also liked that this tied in at the same time he was doing Flash, and how it also tied into Final Crisis. And so he did a really good job from the storytelling aspect of things, and then the art was really sound too. So the only other thing I'll mention about this story is that some of the events get too big for their own good, especially when it gets to be some kind of space war. But for this being a Green Lantern story and it being a space war, it felt a lot more grounded, like Identity Crisis, and so I enjoyed it a lot more as an event because it seemed a little more down to earth and a little more relatable when they can talk more about the characters instead of just everything just falling apart. So I really liked the story and I thought it was a great event. How about you, Berger?
I'm right there with you. I personally gave it an 8.5 out of 10. And keep this in mind, I'm not a big event guy. I mean, Green Lanterns are growing on me. I've never disliked them, but like I've never been the biggest fan, but this was a fantastic read. And like to your point, it kept things grounded. for an event. It didn't get too big for his britches, and for galactic kind of character, it was very grounded on Earth, but it didn't even take away from, being a Green Lantern story. I do really like that the Flash was a key contributor during the story as well, and I just kind of, everything was good. The writing made a lot of sense. The characterizations were on point. I really liked the art. From a technical perspective, everything was very clean. Nothing looked too cluttered, and it kind of conveyed the story that was written for it. So yeah, I definitely recommend this being a read, which I'll be honest, I didn't think that it was going to be something I enjoyed this much going into it. I guess I didn't have any reason to not expect it to be great, but, it was awesome. Especially, we're big Geoff guys. But with that, just a quick rundown of what we're going to be doing next and just some of the usual things for you. CBJ Pod on Instagram, hit us up. CBJ Podcast on Facebook. We have a YouTube. You type in Comic Book Junkies. We have a backup of all of our episodes there if you prefer to listen to it that way. We're on all podcast platforms, and you don't have to, but we and any podcast you listen to appreciate a 5-star review. A review would be nice. Helps the algorithm. I don't understand algorithms, but apparently it's good for you. So if you can do that for us, we appreciate it. If not, we still love you. But next time, we'll let you know what we're doing. We're going to be recapping Christmas in July. Now, you guys may be saying, it's not quite July, and you're not recording this in July. How could it be Christmas in July? Well, let me tell you something.
Mind your business.
That, and July's a state of mind. It's a summertime gift exchange, really. And it's something you should do with your friends if you're cool. Buy a book. Who doesn't love getting a book? You always buy yourself a book, a cool key issue. We only ever get books really from our fiancés, maybe, if we're lucky. So, one homie gets a homie a book and the other one gets a book for the other. And it's a great time because it's a surprise. You set your budget and you find out what cool shit you got. And so, yeah, we actually just did that, and you'll be able to hear about it next time. Do you have any last words for our great listeners, Joe?
I'm about to open up my book now, so you guys will be hearing about that soon, and thank you guys for listening.
Thank you.